Hi, I'm Jennifer Matos with the Noah Webster House in West Hartford Historical Society, and I'm bringing you the 38th episode of the Armchair tour of West Hartford history. Standing up on a hill off of South Main Street near the intersection of South Main Street and New Britain Avenue on a road called Brightview Lane. And I'm standing in front of a house called the Charles E. Beach House. Now, some of you may have toured this house when it was up for sale back in 2018. The owners of the house generously opened the home as a fundraiser for the museum. So some of you have had the wonderful experience to go inside this house, which is a very special house built between 1900 and 1901 and is on the National Register of Historic Places as a shining example of a Shingle Style home. So Charles E. Beach, a member of the Beach family, is best associated with Vine Hill Farm. And Vine Hill Farm was started by a man named Charles M. Beach, so Charles E. Beach's father. And he came from a wealthy family. He came to the West Hartford area in 1859 and began to acquire land. So he ended up purchasing 6 different farms in West Hartford to create this estate that we're really standing on. They would have owned all of this land where we're kind of perched on this hill above South Main Street, the whole way down to South Quaker Lane where Beachland Park is. And we have done an episode on Beachland Park in the past. And if you watch that, you'll know that Beachland Park is named after the Beach family because they donated the park and the creamery building back in the 1940s. So Charles M. Beach settled here in 1859, and he actually moved into a house that was already existing. It's 11 Winthrop Road, and that house was built in 1850. And he and his wife Frances had 6 children, and Charles E. Beach was the 6th child and the youngest son. So he would have grown up here on this estate, which included various buildings, including some homes that were rented out to tenants, or a different house where they had some of their servants live. Interestingly, in the 1870 United States Census, the family is listed here. Charles M. Beach is listed as a merchant. His wife is listed as keeping house. And they have the children, Harriet, Frances, Thomas, Edith, Mary, and Charles, all ranging in age from 19 years old to 9 years old, being Charles E. Beach. And they lived on the estate with 2 domestic servants and a farm laborer. And what's really stands out in my mind when I read the census record was that Charles M. Beach's house, which would have been the 11 Winthrop Road, was listed as being valued at $15,000. And the value of his personal property was listed at a staggering $85,000 in 1870. What this tells us is that Charles E. Beach was born into a very privileged family. So he actually ends up kind of inheriting the farm and taking over management of the farm. So he grows up in West Hartford. This is Charles E. Beach now, the son. He attended the University of Massachusetts at Amherst, and he graduates in 1882. And at that point, he takes over management of the farm. And one of his best moves is to hire a man named Frank Stottmuller to manage the farm for him in 1885. And Stottmuller was also from West Hartford. He was a recent Yale grad. And together, the two of them create this really profitable, successful dairy enterprise. And they created something called hygienic milk. And we talked a little bit about this when we did our Beachland Park video, but it was what they also called baby's milk. They found a way to pasteurize the milk so that it would be super pure, good enough for a baby, and they actually shipped this product throughout the United States. Later, Stottmuller is named the state dairy commissioner and also the state agricultural commissioner. So they're very successful at running this dairy business. In 1895, Charles E. Beach gets married to a local West Hartford girl named Charles H. Coffing. Her father was Charles Coffing, prominent farmer who they lived at 272 South Main Street, so just right around the corner, and the house still stands there. Charles and Catherine have 2 children, 2 sons. Charles F. Beach, who was born in 1896, and Thomas Coffing Beach, who was born in 1899. And so Charles E. Beach actually builds this house for his new family. So he starts building it in the year 1900. It's an 8,000 square foot house just around the corner from where he grew up, at 11 Winthrop Road. And of course, what's important to note is there was no Winthrop Road and there was no Brightview Lane at that time. This was just the Vine Hill Farm, the Beach Estate. So the 11 Winthrop Road today, we know it as Charles M. Beach House, which was built in 1850. They also owned 9 Brightwood Lane, which was a house built in 1730, known as the Augustus Stanley House. They rented it out to tenants. This house, which is 18 Brightwood Lane, which was built by Charles E. Beach for his family. 50 Brightwood Lane was built also in 1901 as a carriage house for the family. And then 65 Brightwood Lane, which was built in 1804, was also owned by the Beach family, and they used it for housing for their servants. So in addition to all of these different buildings, there were barns, a blacksmith shop, a grist mill, an ice pond, and of course the creamery we mentioned that still stands today in Beachland Park off of South Quaker Lane. Unfortunately for the Beach family, Charles E. Beach's wife, Catherine, passed away before they were even able to move into the house. So a very tragic young woman dying, never getting to see her children grow up. So Charles E. Beach moves into this house with his 2 young sons and then also his unmarried sisters. So his sisters Mary, Frances, and Edith. He moves in with them. They help take care of the children and the house, and then they also live with some additional servants. So in the 1910 census record, they are living in the house with an Irish servant and a German servant. During World War I, the Beach family was extremely involved with the war effort and raising funds for the war effort. They held this huge French market here that drew 1,000 people to raise money for the effort. Charles E. Beach also headed the Red Cross for Connecticut, and so they were just very active, civic-minded people. As we get past World War I, the farm kind of declines, and eventually there are a lot of other farms in the area that are growing and creating not only competition, but eventually kind of surpassing this Vine Hill farm. The farm declined, sections of it were parceled off, and the largest part, which was about 30 acres, was given to the town of West Hartford by the Beach family to create Beachland Park in 1932. Charles E. Beach died in 1940, and he leaves the estate to his 2 sisters, Mary and Edith. And when they pass away, they leave the land to the sons. The sons sell the land, and it's subdivided. So basically, all the houses that you see here today, except for the ones I mentioned that were historic, these are all newer houses that would have been built between 1940 and 1960 as kind of a new small lot suburban residential development. And of course, the new road created Brightwood Lane. I hope you learned something new about the Charles E. Beach house. See you next week. Bye-bye.